Okay, welcome to another installment of Lessons with Louie. We currently have a work order for a shower that has very little hot water pressure. As you can see, this type, when you turn it on, it starts cold, and then as you keep spinning it, it gets to the hot water section, and the pressure just kind of goes down to almost nothing. So we're going to be switching out the part we need in order to get that working better. And back off. Okay, unfortunately, in order to shut the water off to that shower, we have to shut the water off to the entire track, which is located from the elevators, from the 20 tower elevators, with this door with that little label on it. There is this door right here, back into this empty space, which currently has barely functioning lights. You can see a couple of locker rooms back that way. And there are 3 valves up here for the hot water that have to get shut off. And there is 1 valve for the cold water up here that has to get shut off. And there is a ladder, but it is somewhat flimsy, so use at your discretion. It might be better to get something a little sturdier. Okay, I'm going to go around to the sinks in both these locker rooms and open up the hot and the cold at the sink to try to drain as much water as I can so that when I take that valve apart, I don't get sopping wet. Got some of them turned to the hot and some of them turned to cold. They may need new aerators sometime soon. These ones on the track get kind of plugged up fairly frequently, but that's another subject. Okay, it's only been a few minutes, and as you can see, the hot water is down to almost nothing, as is the cold water. So we'll probably be able to work on it with it like this. We'll see how it goes. Here we are back at the shower in question. And the cold water is down to pretty much nothing. You can hear it kind of gurgling in the line. And turning it past there to the hot, also down to pretty much nothing. So I'm going to start taking this apart. We've got an Allen screw in here. That's our first step. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And I've already got this Allen wrench a bit loose, so unscrew in there. Pull that off. And that's what we have underneath. Now this particular one, we've tried to knock the rust loose, I think by whacking it on the end with a hammer. The only trouble with that is sometimes this brass, being soft metal, will kind of mushroom out as you're whacking on it. And then you won't be able to get your handle back on, and you'll either have to file it down, like this one was here, or you'll have to replace the stem, which is what we're going to do anyway, because whacking it with a hammer didn't quite resolve the issue. So we'll get this taken care of. I'm going to take this outer ring off here that holds on all this escutcheon. Okay, that particular ring is off. Now I need to get that screw out, and then this whole thing should be able to come off. Okay, we got that outer layer out, and that inner one, which was held by that smaller ring that was screwed on to this. And here we can see our cap assembly with our stem poking out. We have fitted this with part of a toilet gasket, actually, to one of our foam gaskets to try to stop water from leaking down inside on the other side of the shower pan. You can see a little set screw right here. That is part of an anti-scald feature, because this particular type of faucet, you just open and open and open, and it gets hotter and hotter. And that little screw will prevent it from doing that. So yeah, our water is off. We seem to be drained. I'm going to go ahead and stick a socket onto here and unscrew this. Okay, got our cap piece off. Now there is a little rubber ring which is still stuck inside of there, which I'll have to take out. But there you can see what is referred to, I believe, as the spindle. Usually that'll come out with this. This one, it seems to be kind of stuck. I'll wiggle it out of there and then I'll start recording again. Now one thing before I stop that you should be aware of is that water will, after this is taken apart, start to dribble down, and it can wind up on the inside of the wall. So we don't want to have this open too long. The fourth floor track is a pretty big area and has a lot of water in the pipes in the ceiling, so even after the water stops coming out at the sink, it can still continue to dribble out here for a long time. So we probably won't get it completely dry before we started working on this thing. We'll just try to move kind of quick. Now I will probably take our new piece and take a whole bunch of plumbing grease on it before I pull this thing out of there the rest of the way, just in case I am holding a bit of water back in there by this spindle. But I'll get everything ready to go and pull this out and show you what it looks like on the inside. I don't think I'm going to replace the seat on this one if I don't have to. The seat is back in there further, and it is kind of a booger to get out because they usually hold on really tight, and also due to the curvature of the inside of this valve body, it's hard to get a socket on the darn thing. But we'll see how things go when I turn it back on. I suspect I'll be okay. I might take something like an Allen wrench or something small and poke it inside the little holes in the existing seat just to make sure it's all clear. I'll show you what that looks like on a new one, but not right now. I'll show that at the end of this. This is what a new spindle looks like. It's got some grease already on it from the factory. Yeah, I'm out of focus. There we go. And it's got all these little holes that line up with things when you turn it on. And as you can see, this one, the end is still nice and shiny and pristine. It hasn't been filed down. It hasn't been whacked with a hammer, so it's fatter on the end. But one thing to listen for is if you take this and you shake it, you can hear that piece on the inside of this. Autofocus. You can hear that piece on the inside of here, back where my finger is, rattling around. And that has to do with allowing the hot water to pass through versus the cold water. And basically on the ones we found that have no hot water pressure, this thing no longer makes any rattle sound to it. It sounds like it's solid because it's plugged up with rust. Sometimes we've had luck soaking them in CLR and then, you know, getting that loose again, and then we can put them back on the shelf. But for the most part, just stick a new one in, and especially if the end where my thumb is has been whacked with a hammer and has been filed down and is on its last legs, definitely replace it. Yeah, that big old hexagonal shape is the seat on this thing. I suspect it's probably fine. We weren't having really any leaks up here when it was shut off, so I think we're probably okay. I'm going to go ahead and stick our new spindle into our existing cap, and I'm going to put some stuff back together. Okay, got our thing put back together, kind of. And just so you can see that motion as you turn the handle, as you unscrew it, that stem is drawn towards the cap. And right there is that set screw I was talking about that does the anti-scald. So I got this screwed all the way that way on this. And I'm going to go ahead and stick it in there, and I'm going to screw this whole thing back in over at the shower. One last thing. I did go ahead and took a little Allen wrench and tried to poke around in there and make sure those are clear, those little holes. I don't know how well you can see them on this, but near as I can tell, I think they're okay. I may smear some plumbing grease around there. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'll go ahead and smear some on there. And then I'll put this back together. Okay, I've got my cap back on, and from this point on, everything should be sealed. So you should be able to turn the water back on. I'm going to go ahead and use my handle to close this, and then when I turn my water back on, I should be able to tell if it's operating normally, if anything's leaking here, if that set screw's bad, or the packing nut right here, or anything like that. But yeah, I am going to take a little break and get back to that after I eat lunch. Okay, I'm back in the room with the shut-off valves. The cold over that way and the hot up here. I'm going to start turning them back on. And when I do so, should go without saying, in this building with the age of the pipes, I will turn these valves back on slowly and let the pressure build up slowly. Then I will go and vent the air out of the lines. Assuming, of course, we don't have any problems. Okay, I just came back after turning the valves on, and unfortunately, I think that little set screw is dripping. There's an O-ring inside there, but at this point, I think it might be safer just to try and replace the cap. So I'm going to go turn the water off and drain it again, and then I'll swap out that part too, which I have one of those with me. Okay, I have a new one of these cap assemblies. I don't trust that the O-ring on the old one's set screw is any good, so I'm just going to replace the whole thing. I'm going to add some plumbing grease onto this and stick it back into that hole. Okay, here I am back after round 2 switching out that cap. I do not see any drips, so I am going to start venting the line at the sinks. That's a good time to mention I am following a trick I heard where if you take one of our aerators and you pop the internals out of it and then screw that outer part back on, it will help funnel the water even when it's trying to splatter because there's no aerator. You can see it's spitting out cold water, just trying to burp the lines, get all the air out, and then I'll work on getting all the brown out because our galvanized water lines do get rather discolored after they've been turned off and back on again. So we'll see how this goes. Here we see cold water, and over here, hot water, which, as I said, gets discolored the most easily. I'm going to try to clear some of that out over here. It's important you do this before you put the aerator back in, otherwise the aerator will just get plugged and we'll have to replace the aerator. Okay, I went ahead and put this thing back together, all the way back together. I took the set screw in just a little bit. I was worried maybe it was unscrewed a little far on the other one, so this one only has about 360 degrees rather than 1.5 turns. Just has 1 turn instead of 1.5. Still gets fairly warm, but yep, we turn it on. And we can get hot water, fairly hot. And you can hear there's still a little bit of air and stuff in the line, but I'll run the water some and get that out of there. I'm also going to check back where my shut-off valves were by the elevators. Make sure nothing's dripping from any packing nuts or anything. And we'll call this one good. Yeah. Just one last note before I pack this thing up is that what I was saying before about the old one versus the new one, this old one cannot hear anything shaking. That's because this little thing inside of here is plugged up and it is stuck with all the rust, and that is evidently enough to stop the water from going through.